Following Biden's secret authorization for Ukraine to fire U.S. HIMARS rockets into Russian territory, Ukraine has done so. I will stress this. Biden has authorized Ukraine to strike Russian targets using U.S. weapons. I call that Biden being the chief military officer of Ukraine. I call this Western forces attacking Russian territory. Well, that's where we currently are. The Kremlin has stated that if Ukrainians fire U.S. weapons into Russia, it very well may be a casus belli for war. They are threatening to declare war on NATO directly. Dmitry Medvedev says this is not Ukraine doing anything. They view this as NATO supplied and supported weapons firing into their territory. And it's happened. There's videos. The New York Times is reporting this. And here's my favorite part. When I tweeted out that Western forces have begun firing weapons into Russia, I get a community note saying it's not accurate to call them Western forces because Ukraine is a sovereign nation that can only take military action if Joe Biden gives them the approval to do so. A sovereign nation that is trained, armed, funded by NATO. A sovereign nation where Blinken in the United States says that Ukraine will be in NATO. Yeah, ain't nobody buying it. We are not stupid. This could very well be the brink of World War III, or maybe we're already in it. I don't know. Russian state TV is already saying this is World War III. A lot of people in Europe have been saying it. My friends, there's not going to be a clear line where we know when it's begun. I don't think there's going to be a very easy shot heard around the world. Maybe this is it, maybe not. There were drone terror strikes in Russia already. Who knows? This could escalate, as we've already gotten reports that Russia has removed a line of demarcation from a lake that separates Russia from Estonia. Moves may already be in place for this war to expand. And what are we supposed to say? It is Western forces that have opened fire on Russian territory. Now, sure, Russia invaded Ukraine, but it is now NATO-supplied forces and Western powers attacking Russian territory directly. Call it whatever you want. We're going to talk about that. We got a bunch of news pertaining to Hunter Biden's trial. Donald Trump is going to get his concealed carry revoked. Now that's just terrible. Two-way absolutist, right? And then the World Health Organization is saying bird flu is now in humans and a man has died. I hope you're ready for how wild this year is going to be. Before we get started, my friends, head over to castbrew.com and buy coffee. We got Alex Stein's Primetime Grind. We got Ian's Graphene Dream. Which one's the best? I don't know. You decide. Alex Stein's Primetime Grind, 2 times caffeine. Drink responsibly. It is a dark roast. Ian's Graphene Dream is low acidity. That's something I've never had a low acidity coffee, but Ian he assured us that's the right one. If you want to support the show, you like what we do, go to castbrew.com, buy our coffee, help support our efforts at building physical locations where y'all can hang out, and head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member to support our work directly, because this show is only possible because you guys are members. So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. You can follow me. I never introduce myself on the show. I'm the only one who never does. You can follow me at Timcast on X and Instagram. Joining us tonight to talk about this and everything else is Bill Ottman.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Who are you?
My name's Bill Ottman. I'm founder, CEO of Minds. We're an open source, decentralized social network. If you want to take control of your social media, launch your own app, hit up minds.com, minds.com. You can find us at Minds on X.
I am Phil that remains. Oh, no, wait a minute. I totally botched my intro. How you guys doing? I'm the lead singer of the heavy metal band All That Remains. I was ready to go because Tim was talking about his address. I was ready to go into my exit. Anyways, how you doing, Hannah Claire?
Thank you, Phil Labonte of All That Remains, the heavy metal band. I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm a writer for scnr.com, Scanner News. Follow all of their work at Timcast News on Twitter and Instagram. Hi, Serge.
Hey, Hannah Claire. I'm Serge. Let's get it, guys.
I just want to shout out the people. There's a really great comment. Someone said, Tim is like, it's all going pot. Buy my coffee. Yeah. Yeah, when wars start, life doesn't stop. Watch the videos out of Syria during the Civil War of people walking through rubble and active gunfire with grocery bags from a supermarket. Let's jump into this first story from the New York Times. Ukraine strikes into Russia with Western weapons, official says. The official said Ukraine had destroyed missile launchers in the Russian region of Belgorod using an American-made rocket system. So we've got these videos that have been coming out of Russia. Just days after the Biden administration granted permission for Ukraine to fire American weapons into Russia, Kiev took advantage of its new latitude, striking a military facility over the border using a U.S.-made artillery system according to members of Ukraine's parliament. This has already been reported on in Russia as well, confirmed by both sides. Yehor Chernev, the deputy chairman of the Ukrainian parliament's Committee on National Security, Defense and Intelligence, said on Tuesday that Ukrainian forces had destroyed Russian missile launchers with a strike in the Belgorod region about 20 miles into Russia. Ukraine's forces used a high-mobility artillery rocket system, or HIMARS, he said. Confirmation coming from ABC News as well. And then, let's see, we have this. This is an important context from Politico. Biden secretly gave Ukraine permission to strike inside Russia with U.S. weapons. Here's my favorite part. Here's my tweet. Western forces have begun direct strikes on Russian territory. Russia already warned this would be a declaration of war, and they would retaliate. We ended up getting this beautiful community note, which read, "This is misleading. Western forces have not begun strikes inside Russia. Ukraine is conducting strikes inside Russia using Western American-supplied weapons. Referring to Ukraine as Western forces would not be accurate. Ukraine is an independent, sovereign country that can only take action if Joe Biden tells them they can." Yeah, nice try, deep state. No one's fallen for it. This is a new era. We are wise to your crackpot games, and we ain't playing around. Look. They're going in the media and they're saying this is not war. This is Ukraine's doing it. You have to be a special kind of stupid to believe that's the case. So when I look at these liberal pundits and they're just like, wow, look what Ukraine did after Biden gave them the weapons and the permission. Yeah, that means they're taking orders from Joe Biden. That's it. This could very well be the doorstep of World War III, or at the very least, war, a direct confrontation with Russia. Now, to be fair, we're already at war with Russia. So the question is, does this escalate beyond and become something more akin to World War III?
You can guarantee that Russia is going to consider this an escalation, right? Like what they do, I don't know. I'm not making any predictions about what they do. But inside Russia, you can absolutely guarantee that they're going to consider just the acknowledgement, right? Because there's all kinds of things that they probably know. And they're like, well, we're pretty sure they're doing this, but we can't prove it or whatever. Like all kinds of stuff happens like that when it comes to international politics and stuff like that happens all the time. But when you have something that is either uncovered and the administration or whatever country in question has to admit it, that makes a whole different ball of wax as to how the country that was targeted is going to respond, and how the international community will accept their response. Because like no matter what, the U.S. is going to be like, no, you shouldn't do anything at all, blah, 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 no matter what. But what the rest of the international community is going to say is going to be different because of that.
Yeah, well, we initially saw reports about this authorization from Biden last week, but it was when the Trump conviction came out. So it sort of was like some media reporting on it, but for the most part, it was news that was reported without really being, I think, taken in by the American public. I don't really understand how the White House can defend being like, well, we're not being aggressive against Russia. We're just helping Ukraine out by telling them to use our supplied weapons and force against Russia inside Russia.
And then within days, they actually do it.
Yeah.
Well, we have this from Sky News. Kremlin official threatens war against NATO if Ukraine uses U.S. weapons against Russia. A senior Russian official says the country could go to war with NATO after Biden allowed some U.S. weapons to be used by Ukraine in Russia. So we have rescue workers at a site of a residence hit by a Russian missile in Kharkiv.
That was Friday also. It's not like this is something that they said last year.
This is Friday.
They said that this past Friday.
Quote, Russia regards all long-range weapons used by Ukraine as already being directly controlled by servicemen from NATO countries. This is no military assistance. This is participation in a war against us. And such actions could well become a casus belli. For those that don't know what that means, it means cause for war.
I find this very difficult to argue with, right? Russia has been clear the whole time. They don't want to see an expansion of NATO. They don't want the U.S. to help Ukraine fight against its forces. Like, they have been consistent in what they've said this whole time. Now, I don't agree with everything that Russia is doing. On the other hand, like, what did the Biden administration think was going to happen when they were like, no, it's fine. Go ahead and use these weapons. Russia will be cool about it. Like, I just don't understand the logic. And again, there's a certain level of arrogance, I think, coming from the Biden-Harris administration saying like, oh, well, we can keep telling the American people we're not involved. We're doing the right thing. We're helping Ukraine, when actually we have every signal that they are doing everything they can to escalate this war.
He went on to say it would be a fatal mistake on the part of the West to think that Russia was not ready to use tactical nuclear weapons against Ukraine, and spoke of the potential to strike unnamed hostile countries with strategic nuclear weapons. How you guys doing?
I just think this is stupid. What is the leadership here doing?
It's a game of chicken. The West does not want to lose Ukraine. Russia does not want the West to take Ukraine. And so what we are seeing is the snowflakes in the avalanche. It's the grain of sands being added to a heap. The U.S. does not want to outright just dive straight in with sending in NATO forces into Ukraine and going to war with Russia. They're only doing what they hope they have to do, and Russia's doing the same. This means every time there is a one side is pushed back, the other side will escalate. Russia gets pushed back in the Donbass, then they escalate with artillery strikes and they start expanding. So then the U.S., NATO, and Ukraine, seeing them being the Ukrainian forces losing, a CIA official already predicting that Ukraine will lose the war by the end of the year. What does the U.S. do? They say, turn it up a notch. Deploy long-range rockets into Ukraine and tell them to strike in Russia to push them back. Russia is now likely going to respond with an escalation of their own. There's not going to be a very simple shot heard round the world. This war will be going on for some time, but maybe we're not quite at the point of a World War III. Maybe that will be if and when Russia fires a tactical nuclear strike somewhere in Ukraine to advance their position on the battlefield or to maintain their control of the Donbass region.
The administration, they want the best of both worlds. They want to be able to say we're not at war, meanwhile being at war. And it's just this language game of, is it Western forces or it's not that simple.
You point out the language game, and I think that's something that the American people are going to have to start deciding that they want to see through. You're going to have to go by actions and not really go by what people are saying. It's clear that
these are legal definitions around, what constitutes Western forces.
Yeah. I mean, that's my point. Is like they'll say that they'll use the proper terminology to say that they're doing things legally, and they'll articulate it in a way that should it be brought into a court, it would be, tight as a drum and whatever, and then they're just going to do whatever they want. That is pretty purely obvious. So the American people, the only option we have is the American people have to decide that they want to vote a different way. They want to decide that they want to vote for people that will not behave this way.
Right, and to not get them further entrenched in foreign conflicts, right? Like, I don't think anything done under the Biden administration internationally has really been or I should say very few things, but definitely not in Ukraine or Israel. Like, I don't think we are benefiting the American people who we have an obligation to first. I think we're not even helping the Ukrainians in this point because we're just looking to escalate war, which always results in more death.
There's no honor in war anymore. It's just manipulation. I mean, yeah, not that there was. Fair enough.
Yeah,
you can't just declare it. No one declares war anymore.
Europeans have some weird kind of sense of honor in war during perhaps like the colonial era in the United States. If someone waves the white flag, respect them and let them come in. Well, you kind of had to, because if you don't communicate, you can't end the war. How do you accept a surrender? So if someone waves the flag, you don't fire on them. And we try, but real war, when we're talking about people actually fighting for survival, existential threats, ain't no such thing as honor or integrity. No such thing as a war crime. They say, Russia's guilty of war crimes. That means nothing unless you win. Russia's going to do whatever they have to do, and if they win, then it's the U.S. that committed the war crime. And then they'll say the U.S. to pay reparations or something like this. But the U.S., of course, being very far away from this conflict and it being on Russia's doorstep, of course, Russia's never going to stop. The NATO and the United States are not going to stop either. And so I don't know where this ends up, but perhaps this flies over the head of the average American. The reason why I get that community note on my tweet is because deep state shills are like, we can't let people know what we're doing, so we need to downplay this, but no one's falling for it. But the average person's on an X anyway. If Russia fires a nuclear weapon into Ukraine, there is no hiding that.
No.
That will be a shot heard around the world moment, and the U.S. government, Biden, whoever, will not be able to ignore it. Heck, maybe they're counting on it.
I mean, I think the same thing can be said from probably internal Russia perspective, right? It's really easy for them to point towards NATO's actions and say, look, they are specifically threatening us. I think of when they admitted Finland to NATO. That doubled NATO's border with Russia. And we were just supposed to act like Russia wasn't going to see that as a threat. Like, maybe Finland was right to join me. I'm not going to debate whether they should or shouldn't have been admitted. I'm just saying, like, everything we do to make NATO bigger on Russia's doorstep is perceived by a threat by Russian leadership.
We should abolish NATO because without NATO, there is nothing that will prevent us from behaving like we have NATO, right? If you say, hey, we're going to dissolve NATO, all of the countries that were in NATO can still have friendly relations, can still support each other with military action if they want to. You can still do all that stuff, but you don't have to have the organization that will inherently draw the United States into war if a member nation is attacked. And it is no longer the situation where the United States absolutely prevents aggression. Right. It is no longer the case that the United States being an ally to a country will guarantee that there will be no aggression.
Right.
There's asymmetric warfare. There's all kinds of ways to go after nation states nowadays that are not actually big military. So the United States does not offer the same kind of protection that it used to be, or the allying with the United States doesn't.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you this story from militarytimes.com. Lawmakers move to automate selective service registration for all men. I hope Gen Z is listening to this one and Gen Alpha. And I hope people who have kids who are Gen Alpha are listening to this one. Now, to be fair, if you're a dude, you got to sign up for the draft either way. There hasn't been one in 50 years, so most people aren't worried about it. But I'm pretty sure if there's a World War III coming and the U.S. thinks it may be the case, yeah, they're going to draft all of you. Now, I'm fortunate enough that I'm old. I am 38, and so I don't gotta worry about it. When you're between like 18 and 26, you're just like, oh, I hope a war doesn't break out where they're gonna make me fight it, and I don't gotta go fight for these crackpots. But Gen Alpha and Gen Z will have to.
What is the cutoff for?
Well, they
and how are we defining men in the modern vernacular?
So it'll go forever. Right? If
it's needed, it's just
right. Like Ukraine's drafting women now and the elderly. That's what Ukraine is pulling women and the elderly to the front lines, and they don't give them. There's no training. They grab a guy off the street. There's videos of them they'll grab a guy off the street and be like, "You're going to war," and then people freak out like, "What's happening?" They put him in a uniform, hand him a gun, and say, "Go," and then they're just cannon fodder. But they don't care. The U.S. certainly doesn't care. NATO doesn't care. So here's the story. A new plan from House lawmakers would automatically register men for a potential military draft when they hit 18, avoiding potential legal consequences connected to failing to file the paperwork at a proper time. Language included in the House Armed Service Committee's draft of the annual defense authorization bill would mandate the automatic registration of all males between 18 and 26 living in America in the selective service system, the federal database used for a military draft in the case of a national emergency. It hasn't been used for that purpose in 52 years, but men who fail to register can face a host of legal consequences. Now, I wonder what would be happening right now where you have a Democrat, Chrissy Houlihan, sponsoring the automatic registration language, calling it both a money-saving and common-sense reform. Why? I tell you this. I can assure you right now, the majority of young men will never agree to fight in a nation where women do not have to, but are granted equal say in government, politics, and favored in courts. There is a huge issue right now with the rise of the likes of Andrew Tate and Pearl Davis, and now you got Homath, and these channels exist for a reason. Young men are not happy with the disproportionate, the second-class citizen system that as related to things like selective service. You go to an 18-year-old guy and say, you will be forced to fight and die for a country because a female politician who does not have to do it mandated you do so. Now, you go back in time and a guy says, I am going to go fight and die, and you're expected to do the same. And a lot of guys were like, it's our duty. We all do it. Now you have a system where you have a bunch of elite multimillionaire women like Nancy Pelosi and other Democrats who would vote in favor of this. Not to mention older guys who don't have to fight, telling young men they have to go fight and die. One of the big reasons why the draft is not popular in the first place is because you have elite older men forcing young people to go fight and die for them and their wars, and they don't have to. I say we take it all the way back to the 1900s when they tried passing this bill I think it was an amendment that said if you vote in favor of war, you have to go fight for it. They said we'll put an amendment saying we vote on whether to declare war directly, and then if you vote yes, you're conscripted on the spot. It's going to be interesting to see what happens right now with the current state of how young men are viewing the world and the rise of these angry young men who are pissed off about this system.
Are politicians exempt from drafts?
Well, no, it's an age thing. There's
right, but if you're younger, you're
not going to be in Congress if you're under 25.
Right.
So they're drafting only young guys, and typically people who can't afford to pay someone to go in their stead. That's what they used to do back in the day. If you were rich, you could pay someone to go to the draft for you. So if you got called in, they'd be like, okay, here's money, he'll do it. Yep. But I don't know if it's actually going to take off or if it's going to happen. But I do think it's interesting that they're actively trying to do it right now of all times.
Yeah.
Right.
I do think it's fair for men to question why the standard, if feminism's so great and we all want equality, why they are still expected to be in the selective service. I wouldn't want women to be drafted. I also think men and women are not the same when in combat. But I think you can't have culture saying one thing and then be like, but actually in this case, you guys have to do this thing.
This impulse that to basically get rid of men and women, it has a name. So people, and there's a lot of people that aren't familiar with it there, but it has a name. It's called gender abolitionism, right? They want to abolish the concept of gender. We laugh
Not all
about
the time, apparently.
We
just sometimes
we chuckle about it and stuff. But I tell you what, I was telling the guys in the band that in 2015, I was like, trans people are going to be a big deal. Like it's going to be a national conversation, and watch you see it. And they're like, you're crazy, Phil. So I'm telling you right now, if you don't believe me, Google it. Gender abolitionism. They want to get rid of the concept of gender between men and women. That is impossible. It is impossible, and it will absolutely wreak havoc in our society if we try it. We can say to trans women and trans men, we'll call you she and we will be polite, but there are going to be places where you are not going to be allowed to be if you're a trans man, and there are going to be places where you're not going to be allowed to be.
The military doesn't allow that already.
Yeah.
In the military, it specifically says for the draft, your identity is meaningless and void. Not and also serious. So
but that shouldn't be. I think the point of me saying that there are people that are gender abolitionists is we should have people that change that policy in the military.
Right. My point is the military is saying if you're a trans woman, you're a guy.
Well,
if you're a trans man, you're a woman. You can't be in the military. They don't care.
I thought there were trans people in the military now.
If you are, you can't be drafted.
Okay.
If you are a female, identify as a man, you cannot be drafted. If you are a man who identifies as a woman, you will be drafted. They have clarified this specifically.
Yeah.
Males who identify as female are males as far as the draft is concerned. They don't care. When it comes to social life inside the United States, they literally don't care about this. Military has no reason to care. But if you're male, you're going to war. And they're going to hand you the weapon and they're going to send you out there. So here's a story. BBC. Russia's removal of border markers unacceptable, says the EU. So the escalation's happening. There's a lake, and half the lake's controlled by Russia, the other half's controlled by Estonia. And Russia went out and removed the international border barriers, or the border markers. Certainly seems like there's an escalation for conflict happening. So I hope Gen Z is listening. It's going to be, they should be excited to hear that they're first in line.
And for everybody that says that we're doomers here, like, just tell me where the off-ramp is. Been saying it for a year.
You know I'm really excited for? I'm excited for you guys. Have you guys seen Edge of Tomorrow?
Yes.
No.
With Tom Cruise. It's basically action movie Groundhog Day. It is.
It is. Yeah. No, just point it out.
That's the one with the crazy plane stunt.
No.
That's all Tom Cruise movies.
Edge of Tomorrow is there's an alien invasion. The humans all unite together to fight against the aliens, but they're losing everywhere. And so Tom Cruise plays a propagandist PR guy who works for who's in the military, and he's like, his story is that he did ROTC and then went and ran a marketing firm. So when it came time, he said, I'll do marketing for the military, and then one of the generals of the Allied forces wants to send him to the front lines with a camera to film their new exosuits that they can fight with to push back on the aliens.
Oh, yeah, I have seen it.
It's great. Yeah. And then he gets covered in alien blood, which sends him in a time loop. So every day he wakes up at the same time and then ends up destroying the aliens. I'm excited for Harry Sisson. You know, because he's like sitting there smiling, shaking hands with Biden. And then you know it's going to happen. I mean, it won't be literally like that, but they're like, hey, look, when the war comes, you're going to have to convince everybody to go fight and die. If it comes down to it, he's going to be the kid that they're going to hand the camera to, and they're going to say, have fun in Europe.
Well, and if you think
Front lines are calling, buddy.
If you think Biden's such a good president, I mean, hopefully you'll be like, yes, of course, President Biden, I will go into this war. That sounds great. I mean,
he'll be crying.
No, I doubt they would want to go. The thing is, like, I think the anti-war sentiment in America is really strong. So I think there are all kinds of generations that would normally be anti-war that are suddenly having to face the reality that they are advocating for a president that is pro-war, right?
Yeah, you really do not see Biden supporters lining up, cheering on, or getting ready. I'm going to go to Ukraine.
No.
You don't see it.
No, they're happy to hang the flags and they're happy to have the flag flown in our Congress, but they don't actually want to be the people to be on the ground. And I think that's the sort of maybe generational gap between generations that have faced hardship and have been closer to war times versus the younger generations today. Like they don't have a concept of what it's like. I think Russia removing the barriers is interesting again because this is obvious, right? There is clearly no de-escalation plan, and I think the Biden administration is making this worse for everybody. I don't think they're doing anything to to stop Russia from seeing NATO as an increasing threat. And so why wouldn't Russia increase what it's doing? Like this is all just more until, I don't know, what, Ukraine collapses? What is the plan here? And the reality is I don't think there is one. It's just ego versus,
This is an interesting story from today, but also the least relevant. World War III has already begun, claims Russian state TV. Literally don't care.
Well,
because they've said this 80 times already, so it's like, yeah, we get it.
When did World War II get classified as World War II? Like, when did people start calling it World War II?
I can't speak for World War II. It was obviously sometime after the war had already started a ways into it.
Right.
But this is actually a question for all wars.
Yeah.
When did people begin to refer to the war by name, and when did they realize they were in war? And of course, the example I know much better is the Civil War. And they had no idea they were in a civil war when the Civil War started. They had no idea that Bleeding Kansas was the lead up to the Civil War. When Fort Sumter happened, there was no Civil War. We call that the start of the Civil War. When it happened, they said, no, it's not. Are you crazy? You'd go to somebody and you'd say, do you think we're in a Civil War? And they go, what? No. Then at the first Battle of Bull Run in Manassas, they went on the hilltops and they picnicked. And they watched as troops lined up and they was like, there's no Civil War. And then it was a massacre. And then they're like, oh, wow, maybe we're in a Civil War.
Maybe this is pretty bad.
They probably just called it the war, though.
At first, it was called rebellion. It was rebellion in the South, depending on who you talk to. Then it was called the war between states for a little while. And then about a year or two into it, they started referring to it as the U.S. Civil War. Yeah. Abraham Lincoln was elected during the Civil War. He was reelected during war. They just excluded southern states from the election. So Zelensky, in Ukraine, he canceled elections. Can't have an election, he said. We're at war. Yeah, that's not a real country.
Convenient for him. Interesting.
Not a real country. Puppet state controlled by U.S. military powers. So, Russia keeps saying World War III has already begun. I get it, dude. I agree. But we're going to need a shot heard around the world moment that the average person wakes up to. I'll put it this way. And it's the same thing for any conflict. U.S. Civil War, maybe. I don't know. If everything right now were to stop, like if Joe Biden came out and said, I'm just too old. Imagine he does a press conference like, I'm too old for this. I got these guys screaming in my ear from the intelligence agencies about how Trump's got to be stopped. No, I'm done. I'm resigning. Donald Trump should win the presidency. It's enough fighting in this country. We're going to come together. And everyone's like, wow, what's going on? And then Trump wins. And Trump says, we're going to mend this nation. We're going to bring everyone together. And I'd bet, wow. We're watching de-escalation. That's never going to happen. That's an absurdity. Same thing is true for what's going on in Europe right now. There's no point at which Russia comes out and says, guys, we're sorry. Our border nations will be controlled by NATO. We're totally cool with it. We will surrender Crimea and our access to the Black Sea. We will surrender our access to the Mediterranean. And we will no longer sell energy to European nations. Never going to happen.
I also don't think Zelensky would ever want America to withdraw the monetary and military influence that they have there, right? But he's giving Biden a hard time for not coming to this peace summit in a couple weeks. Like there is a level of it has done his presidency wonders to have this conflict, to be a wartime president. It literally allowed him to stay in office.
Zelensky?
Yeah.
Well, that's like saying the janitor of a company doesn't want his employer to remove the trash cans.
Maybe, but I think it means, like, I think the other thing is that he is not really incentivized to de-escalate this war, right? If you know the U.S.
has
is
no
going to write
authority.
a blank check, right? But also, if you know the U.S. is going to write a blank check and you get to stay president, because isn't he term limited? He's supposed to be out, but he said,
No,
we're at war.
but I'm confused because he's not a president of a country. He's a janitor.
I know, but
So, like,
hypothetically.
his wants and needs are completely immaterial to what the U.S. is doing in Ukraine. The idea that Zelensky is like, I'm president and I hope I win again is like, just, come on.
Well, he doesn't need one again because he can just be the president until he decides elections come back.
Well, no, it's
I get what you're saying.
It's whatever
like,
Biden
he's not
decides.
whatever. It's what Biden says. I get that. But I'm also making the point that Zelensky is benefiting from this. Like, he can comply with whatever Biden's doing. There's no benefit for him for resisting
like
Biden.
the way a janitor benefits by getting a paycheck for being paid to clean up the floors.
Sure. I mean,
Zelensky is an
any kind
employee.
of henchman in a corrupt company would benefit from it.
Zelensky is the employee of the West. He is there to do the job he's instructed to do, and that's it. His elections don't matter. There's already no elections. He's just an employee as far as anyone would be concerned as to what's actually happening in that country. He has to get permission from Joe Biden to use weapons against Russia. Yeah, because he's an employee. That's it. Maybe a servant is a better word. Under the command of. Mm-hmm. There's no elections because Biden and military intelligence, as it's CIA, said there's not going to be elections. We're not going to change out which puppet we're using for control of Ukraine. So just don't do it. And there's no one in Ukraine who can resist. And no country is going to intervene on the behalf of Ukrainians. They've fled. The people that I knew from Ukraine have fled a long time ago. They don't live there anymore. And if Ukraine falls, then 20 years from now, they'll be like, oh, so you're Ukrainian? Wow. So what is it like now that there's no Ukraine anymore? There's no country called Ukraine. Remember Bohemia? I knew a guy who was Bohemian. Ain't no Bohemia anymore. All right, well, let's bring it back home for all you guys because we're here to just ruin your day. This is from NBC News. World Health Organization confirms first death in Mexico from bird flu never seen in humans. The 59-year-old was the first lab-confirmed human case of the infection with an H5N2 subtype of the virus, which has been reported in poultry in the country. How dare you blame chickens? Look at them. They ain't doing nothing wrong. You put them there. Oh, look at this. Flock of white broiler chickens. Indeed it is. The World Health Organization said on Wednesday a death was caused by the first laboratory-confirmed case of infection with a subtype of avian influenza. This was the first laboratory-confirmed human case of the infection with H5N2. We read that already. The victim had no history of exposure to poultry or other animals. The person had multiple underlying medical conditions and had been bedridden for 3 weeks for other reasons prior to the onset of acute symptoms. This story is going massively viral because people think we are going to get another lockdown.
It doesn't seem like it's actually dangerous enough. They said that he had underlying conditions, etc. So it's likely that they're reporting this because they're looking for clicks. But at the same time, I don't think that it's out of the question that something like that could happen.
They've been warning about bird flu for like 6 months.
A long time.
Yeah, and they were saying that it's got respiratory symptoms a couple of weeks ago. I mean, they've been warning about this for a while. I don't know if you could. There are parts of the population that would probably agree to lock down. What I find interesting about the bird flu case is that they're kind of attaching it to everything. Like for a while, the U.S. health authorities were saying, don't drink raw milk because bird flu. And it just seems like it will become the boogeyman, maybe for lockdowns, but also maybe to give up alternative lifestyles that the government doesn't want you to have.
And it's not just in Mexico, because we've had these stories popping up quite a bit. Reuters says bird flu reported in Iowa dairy herd expanding U.S. outbreak in cows. Come on. They're saying they're culling millions of chickens. They're saying it's in cows now. It's spread to mammals. Now they're saying someone died from it. It certainly looks like they are planting the seeds to get to the point where in a couple months, they're going to be like, the threat of bird flu is too great. It's got a 60% mortality rate. We're locking everything down.
I mean, it's definitely not out of the question because they've done it. You know, whether or not this is
Cow flu.
Whether this is the actual thing that they pull the trigger on, or that would make the people in positions of power decide, okay, we need to go ahead and do this because they know that it wouldn't be easy the second time. There'll be much more resistance.
They don't need a lockdown. They need only a guideline. Because as we saw in 2020, the lockdowns were mostly private. guidelines were issued, and private businesses decided to require mandates. So what happens then is insurance companies require mandates, but not even that. This is what we predicted a couple of years ago. First, we thought it was going to be COVID again, but now it's looking like maybe it'll be bird flu. They're going to come out and say, we're not locking down. The economy can't handle it. We wouldn't do that to you guys. We all agree. But we think you guys should be aware of the risks. Now, because of the risks, and no lockdowns, but because of the risks, we're going to have universal mail-in voting as an option for all of you who are concerned and don't want to congregate at polling stations. So we'll be sending out your universal mail-in ballot, every single person, and, we're good.
And if you want to protect yourself, maybe take this shot.
I don't know about bird flu for that. I mean, they already do the flu vaccines and stuff. But I think the bigger issue is how can they get universal mail-in voting pushed harder and further? So we got data out of Iowa for their elections. We got data out of Texas's, I think, 23rd district with Brandon Herrera. Voter turnout's apocalyptically low. 29,600, I think. Was it 29,600 people voted in a district of 778,000? Now, how many of them are actual Republicans? The mostly Republican states, so let's say 500,000, and only 30,000 actually voted in the primary. And Brandon Herrera lost by 407 votes.
That's so.
If Trump supporters and the right do not turn out in November, Joe Biden wins.
Yep.
The polling shows that among voters who voted every election, 18, 20, 22, they have Biden has a 12-point advantage. Among voters who only voted one time in the past 3 elections, Trump has a 12-point advantage. If Trump supporters don't show up, Biden wins. And maybe that's what they're counting on.
I mean, that is, like, it's true, but that's also true every election. It's super important for people to get out. And it's hard to get conservatives out if they're not excited. I do believe that generally conservatives are going to be excited, but it's really going to boil down to, everyone knows it's going to boil down to the independents. So how do you get out to make sure that you get every single vote? If there's not a ground game for the GOP, they are going to lose.
There is no ground game. There's one guy, Scott Pressler.
I think they have this weird ground game of Trump being in the media and more people being upset about the conviction or different things like that. Although we did see polls that said, for the most part, independents, the conviction in New York made them support Trump. On the other hand, for the most part, people have already kind of decided who they're voting for. I think the biggest obstacle for voter turnout is always going to be basically what happens in the last 8 weeks before the election. Like, stuff that happens right now helps build tension, but I think people who are on the fence about going to the polls make their decision in September and October, and that's really when we're going to know what voter turnout is going to be like. Obviously Scott Pressler, there are a lot of people trying to get people registered. There's good effort. It's not that people should be complacent now, but I think when it comes down to those really hard to get voters, it's the final days that make a decision. I don't know how you feel about this, Bill.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to hear a little bit more about what your guys' experience at the Libertarian Convention, and it just seemed like Serge says meh.
Well, I mean, I think we're dried up on that one.
Okay.
And everyone's kind of just like we're going to do a postmortem with Dave Smith, Clint, and Angela, but the Libertarian Party has basically just nuked themselves, and now they're all basically they're basically Trump supporters.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like the point that I think you got to give credit to Trump for speaking there.
Yeah, sure.
That has a significant impact, but yeah, it's just wild that they nominated that guy, and it's just such a mess.
There was a podcast today of I believe it's the Reason podcast. I forget what they call it, but they were questioning Chase about the trans stuff, and he did not have a convincing answer. First of all, second of all, I don't think people are okay with the libertarian idea of it's okay to trans the kids if the government isn't doing it. Well, I think that the American people want to have
stay
something.
On point. To nominate a guy who's like businesses can mandate medical treatments for people, this is the problem with that's why people call them low libertarians. They're the same. They're the other side of the coin of communists. Idealistic, nonsensical, mumbled garbage. Now you get like Dave Smith, the Ron Paul libertarians. They make a lot of sense. We want sound currency. We don't want foreign wars. We want a country that makes sense with limited government. Oh, I get that. Then the Libertarian Party is basically just like, the government can't make us do it, but private entities can. And so then you get mandates run by private companies that demand it.
Did Dave want to get nominated?
No.
No.
But he was running at one point.
He did not run.
But no, but didn't
He was never running.
Didn't
He had a lot of support. People wanted him to run, but I don't think
But he never ran.
right?
He was never running.
But like he's just like the obvious choice. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, he's the only way that they would have any kind of support.
Right.
Just unbelievable.
So I think what we'll likely end up seeing towards the end of the year is not lockdowns, but some kind of justification to be used to expand universal mail-in voting, which will maximize voter turnout, which guarantees more Biden voters, and Trump voters aren't showing up.
I don't know. I think it's hard to say at this point. I think I would be interested to see, like, have a campaign staffer for Trump on the show and have them explain what they're doing a little bit more, because we do talk about a lot, again, like Scott Presler, things like that. Leading into midterms, there's this whole thing about the red wave, and this is going to, motivate people. Obviously, Virginia was sort of a high point for some conservatives, but it wasn't exactly what had been predicted to be. And I think the variables for this election are so much more complicated. I was listening to an interview from Michael Whatley, the chair of the RNC, and they were saying, like, so how are you going to have your convention if Trump's in jail? And he was like, we're thinking about all the contingency plans. We're thinking about it. Like, people don't really know how to navigate the next couple of weeks. It's hard to say what the atmosphere in America will be like in November, other than to say, I think it will be very tense.
I wonder if anyone has any idea what's going on. Like, if anyone in the Trump administration or the Biden administration, like, if there's any actual plan for what's happening. And, it's like when I sat down with Trump, one of the last things he says, I was like, I hope you win. He's like, well, we better. And I'm like, they don't know. Like, they're trying. You know what I mean? But I'm not even convinced the Biden administration and Democrats actually have a plan. I think they're like, let's just try and put Trump in jail. Then what? I don't know. Just do it. And that's where we're at.
I feel like he knows so much more than he's saying.
Trump?
Yeah. Just, about things like the declassification of Epstein, JFK, 9/11. Like, he looked into UFOs. Like, he looked into all those things. He knows. He could be talking about that. And I think that's how he wins. Talk about that stuff. Talk about what you can.
I disagree. I think you, because you got to get the normies, and to get the normies, you have to talk about literally kitchen table issues, especially considering we're in a situation.
Yeah, but not if you're going after the independents.
The independents are where you're going to get it. You're not going to get, look, I love the Libertarian Party, right? But they were super pumped about Ross Ulbricht, right? And I think Ross should be freed as well. Ross Ulbricht does not move the needle in politics.
Nobody knows who he is.
Exactly. No one cares.
And
no one's going to vote for Trump over Ross Ulbricht. And the libertarians showed you, because the people that would care about Ross the most still booed him.
But it's not just that. They're all morons. I hope they all listen. Because I know a lot of them do. Your party is a bunch of low IQ morons. Trump comes out and says, no war. And they're like, yay. And pardon Ross Ulbricht, yay. Doesn't mention Julian Assange. And I'm like, you know what I'm hearing more and more and more from libertarians? Like, well, he did say he was going to, do you think he'll really pardon Ross Ulbricht? And I'm like, is the most important thing to you that one guy you've read about is being pardoned, and not literally all of the other international issues, financing? I can mention Julian Assange, but we'll talk about the media industry in general, free press. But the only thing they ever say is Ross Ulbricht. And I'm like, I got to be honest, I don't care about that guy at all. Sure, pardon him. That's fine. Doesn't move the needle for me.
Exactly.
Anyone I know. I go to someone and say, what's more important to you, Ross Ulbricht or open borders? They go, who?
Yeah.
We have open borders. It's a problem. And the Libertarian Party wants open borders and is screaming and cheering for Ross Ulbricht. I'm like, it is a joke of a political party that only exists to fill its ranks with people who want to do things that are not allowed to do. That's it.
It's a protest.
The unifying principle of the Libertarian Party is, I, as an individual, want to do this thing that's illegal, so I'll join the Libertarian Party and then tell them that we should be allowed to do it. And that's why none of them agree on anything, and that's why they nominated Chase Oliver. Well, let's jump to this next story from the New York Times. Georgia appeals court stays most proceedings in Trump election case. The order means the prosecution of Donald J. Trump in Georgia is effectively frozen, at least through the presidential election. It's over.
Wow.
Yeah, seriously. Wow.
I didn't even hear about that today.
Because Fani Willis is facing removal.
Right before 7, so.
Yeah, the Georgia Court of Appeals on Wednesday stayed the criminal election interference case against Trump until an appellate panel could resolve the matter of whether the district attorney in Fulton County should be disqualified from prosecuting the case based on a conflict of interest. In a one-page order, the court stated that any movement at the trial court level pertaining to Mr. Trump and 8 other defendants who have appealed a ruling following allowing the prosecutor, her name is Fani T. Willis, to remain on the case was stayed pending the outcome of the appeals. And then you've got the documents case is basically being jammed up by Judge Cannon. So it's looking like, for the most part, Trump is winning all of these, except for the local one. And that's funny, too, because that's the one where he can't pardon himself. Now, Georgia, he won't be able to pardon himself either. But it's funny because a lot of people, I hear people in what we can call the normie-verse who do not understand. And, watching some of these shows on YouTube where, like, other podcasts, and they're like, well, if Trump just goes to jail, becomes president, he'll just pardon himself. We're like, yeah. No, you can't pardon yourself for a state level crime.
Now, what'll most likely happen if that were to happen, he would have an executive order. It would be national security situation. He would say, I'm taking authority because it's a national security. It would be some kind of national security directive that they would come up with, and he would say, okay, I'm doing this, and then he would have them. If they protested, then the Secret Service would say, no, the president gave an order, because you can't have the president in jail.
If he was in jail with Secret Service, he would just turn to the Secret Service and say, open the doors.
Yep, 100%.
And they would go, okay.
And they would figure out how they make the executive order happen after the fact.
There's no local cop or corrections officer who's going to tell the Secret Service no.
Nope.
Not going to happen.
Nope.
But
especially if he did win the election. If they know that he did win, they're not going to. No.
But I don't even know that it matters at this point. I mean, I suppose winning would have to happen. But we're in uncharted territory right now. I mean, July 11th, something weird is going to happen. Because I don't think they're just going to, at first I was saying house arrest makes a lot of sense. And that's what I'm hearing on Fox. And many pundits are saying, yeah, they'll probably put him in an ankle bracelet, limit his ability to campaign. I think Brandon Strzok is right when he was like, why would they stop now? They've gone 100% in every single facet. Why stop now? I'm like, you're right.
Why wouldn't he push them and make them put him in jail? If every time they come down on him.
Now they're arguing they want the gag order to remain indefinitely.
Well, and especially
since this
comes down
I didn't see that either, no.
Judge Merchan, who already said, has threatened Trump with jail time over the gag order. Like, he has already floated the idea that he is willing to put Trump in jail. Why would he not now that there's a conviction? Like, we're saying they, but it really right now comes down to this one guy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really agree that normal people don't care about some of those issues. I mean, maybe fair enough on Ross Ulbricht. That's pretty niche. But like in terms of just basic truth about what is going on in the government, the secret stuff that everybody wants to know about.
Nobody cares about.
I don't agree, man.
But it's a fact.
It's not.
It's a literal fact.
Okay.
All the polling shows that is what it is.
Like you will not be able to walk up to the average person and say, "Do you care about the CIA?" They'll go, "What do you mean?"
I mean, hundreds of millions of people have crypto, and they're happy that he's pushing for.
Not hundreds of millions of Americans. What percentage of Americans?
A lot, tens of millions.
But you're talking about a financial regulatory issue that comes down to members of Congress. People don't care. They're going to ask the single issue right now for everybody is immigration. That's the largest single issue, followed by economy in general. Why is it hard for me to buy bread and milk? And if you go, I mean, dude, I'll bet you $100 right now that if we go to a grocery store right now and just walk up to some random people and say, what's the most pressing issue for you in this election? They're not going to say the secret workings of the government.
Fair enough. The economy is But
I'm not even talking about immigration, abortion. Israel's going to rank higher than that. And then you might argue like, well, isn't that stuff tied to foreign policy? And they'll be like, sure, I guess. They're going to say, I want a ceasefire. Or they're going to say, this is ridiculous. We got to support Israel. And then you're going to be like, what about the CIA and the secret government? I don't care. Don't care what that is.
Yeah, but I think, I don't know. I don't agree. I think people do want to hear the secret truth of what's going on. And I think that it's just this lingering feeling, this uncomfortable idea that, there's just kind of the shadow government that is running and they want to know what's really going on. I think it's becoming much more of a mainstream.
Bro, if you drove your car 10 minutes up the road and walked into like Dairy Queen and said, "Do you want to know the secrets about the inner working of the government?" They're going to go, "The what?"
I don't agree, man. People have, streaming services. They watch crazy videos. Everybody's into this stuff.
Yeah, but not what you're describing. What you're talking about is this amalgam of chaotic conspiracy ideas that exist in various forms, where you say, "Do you want to know the secrets of the government?" and they're thinking aliens in the pyramid, and you're thinking the CIA and Julian Assange.
Yeah, but
I'm saying if you go to someone and say,
"No, I'm thinking aliens," I think that that's a totally valid issue that people like.
Right. The subject of the story that we're talking about is election interference criminal cases in Georgia and whether or not Donald Trump's going to go to jail.
I think a lot of. All right, fair enough. But in that is absolutely a key thing, which, is causing mass donations to his campaign. And everybody's very excited about it for various reasons on both sides. But, I don't know. I just think that the best candidate for president is the one who speaks the most truth.
What kind of numbers do you think of like people generally pay attention to politics on a regular basis? Like daily consumers, right? They're going to something every day in America that,
But that's what I'm saying. I feel like a topic like UFOs is way more mass appealing than boring politics.
Well, the reason I say that is because we're talking about in the context of the election. So that's why I was asking about
the people who care about UFOs aren't voting.
That's not true.
It is generally true, right? So voter turnout is like 50 some odd %.
Okay.
Right. The majority of people, the average person, does not go out and vote. The average person might watch a Joe Rogan and want to hear about Bigfoot. They're not going and voting for Bigfoot as an issue. And most of those people aren't voting at all.
I mean, if it gets spoken about on the debate stage or in any major context, then it can become a voting issue.
I think the one thing that might is Epstein. But then we're talking about a guy who was actually a criminal, high profile, working with government agencies, and died under mysterious circumstances.
If we didn't,
that permeates the average person.
I think if we didn't have the inflation that we had in the past 2 years or so, I think that you guys might be onto something. But I think that right now, the major topic on everybody's mind is the economy.
Well, that's
the fact.
for sure.
But again, the largest single issue is immigration, followed by the economy. And I'm saying the only. So I don't know what you're implying there, Phil, because I'm disagreeing with his idea that people care about those things. People care about immigration, the economy, and then you go down the list and it's like the cost of rent, the price of houses, abortion, Israel, Palestine, foreign policy.
But even if you go down that
conspiracy stuff doesn't even crack the top 30 probably.
Yeah. But even as you go down that list, like 3 of the top 5 are economic. Inflation, the cost of gas and stuff. But the point being, yes, I do agree. I think that, and the reason that I'm saying this, or the reason that I'm trying to make this point, is because honestly, it's super depressing to me when I think about it. I do not have a very I think there are a vanishingly few amount of people that actually care and actually pay attention to regularly, and of even fewer people that know what they're talking about when you actually present them with like, hey, what do you think of this topic? So. I'm despairing.
If you go to the average person and say, vote for Donald Trump and he's going to tell you about UFOs, they're going to say, shut up.
If he started talking about it more seriously, I mean, you have politicians, Matt Gaetz, Representative Luna, Burchett. You've got UFO caucus now.
They'd get offended.
What do you mean they get offended?
We're not seeing videos on TikTok of dads walking their kitchen with a bag of groceries saying, I just want to know about these UFOs.
Understood, but that's only if you think about it in the context of it not being related to the economy, it not being related to
UFOs?
To the black budget. Yes, because if...
Dude, you're convincing nobody.
No, that's not true, man.
There's a video of a 19-year-old kid screaming at the top of his lungs in his car because he can't get a job, he can't pay his bills. These people don't care about UFOs.
But the economy is connected. If there is... And I'm not claiming I'm not on either side of it. I'm on pro disclosure of the information. But if there is secret technology that exists that is, some new form of energy, then that has insane economic implications that changes the whole global economy. So
you're talking about 0.1% of the population that watches those shows.
okay, fine. But if you can educate people that disclosure of this information is going to have major impact on the economy, their quality of life, then it can change people's
you don't
perspective on it.
You don't spend as a campaign billions of dollars doing market research to figure out what people respond to, only to ignore the secrets that you're describing. The reality is Democrats and Republicans have ideological bases that they target. Democrats, and this is the problem with the Libertarian Party, Democrats say, how do we maximize votes? And right now, Democrats are losing Latino and black voters, and they're losing first-time voters. Trump is winning in these areas, so the Democrat strategy has shifted, and now they're targeting white, affluent women predominantly. That's their target market now. The Republicans are like, we want to go for the black community. Donald Trump is doing well. He's got endorsed by a Black Panther, the founding member, and register new voters because they lean towards Trump. The policies of the Republicans and the Democrats are, what do we have to adopt policy-wise for the party that will maximize our vote potential? The Libertarian Party does the opposite. The Libertarian Party says, we don't care what the population thinks. We just want what we want. And they stay. And it's funny because Trump said 3%, which is unfair because they got 1.8 last time around. They're that miserably bad at what they do. So you don't spend billions upon billions of dollars in market research to figure out what the average person cares about, only to then go, well, they really do care about UFOs and government conspiracies, but we're going to ignore all of that and all of the money we spent on this research. If that were the case, it's the only thing they'd talk about. They talk about UFOs all day.
Well, I think that they should more, and that's why the top podcasts on the planet are talking about those things. And if you're not talking about those things, you're not paying attention. So, and that's, I think, to Trump's credit, I think that he does engage with those topics on some level. You know, he does not dismiss those things, and I think that that's an important strategy to continue.
The issue is the people who care more about UFOs than, say, immigration or the economy are not going to vote on that issue. No one actually thinks that they're going to get any information or that it matters. The things that motivate people are when they wake up and they can't buy milk for their kids.
All that I'm saying is that it is smart for a candidate to make, like, in the same way that he said, okay, I'm going to be pro Bitcoin, and he created that political division between him and Biden. That's a super smart strategic move. He should do the same thing with all of those topics, because why not? It's just extra fuel for him.
We got big new polling. The May polling from Gallup, top issues, has been released. And what do you guys think the most important issue is? I'm not showing it right now. What do you think the most important issue is for the American people? Quick guesses. 10 seconds. What do you think?
Economic factors, and it's probably
no, wrong.
Cost of food.
Wrong.
I mean, is it an economic thing or is it immigration?
Nope. Neither. It's Joe Biden's failing brain. Bing, 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 bing. The top issue right now with 21% is government poor leadership.
You mean the people don't feel comfortable with a disabled man?
Look at this.
Holding on to the nuclear football?
Immigration has dropped from 27%, the single largest, into May at 18%. And this has pushed government poor leadership to the forefront as the single largest issue in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, listening, I would like to stress the single largest issue right now among voters, the plurality, is Joe Biden's brain don't work. There you go. Followed by immigration, the economy in general, and the high cost of living and inflation. And then we have poverty, hunger, and homelessness. Then the federal budget deficit. Then we have abortion, elections reform, unifying the country, ethics, moral, religious, family decline, foreign policy, foreign aid, focus overseas. And having learned this important fact, from now on, all segments of Timcast IRL will be Biden's brain is broken. Here's why. And then whatever subject you're talking about matters. Biden's brain is broken. And that's why we got to talk about Bitcoin, because that's what people want to click on. They want to click on Biden's broken brain.
I don't know how much you guys looked at it, but the Time interview that came out today that was done at the end of May is fascinating for this reason. They point out the fact that, you know, when asked about what's going on with China, he references Putin. When he's asked about something that's going on in South America, he starts referencing Africa. Like the state of Biden, and this is a private interview prearranged with Biden's press corps, right? Like it couldn't have been a safer environment for him to be interviewed. I think the Times is pretty sympathetic to him, and it's still not looking good. But I think it's interesting because when American people when you guys were talking before, I pulled up this poll from Hamilton College that talked about or was measuring the amount of people that say that they're aware of politics, that they're engaged in the news, and it was highest. This poll is from 2022, so it was particularly high during COVID. I think a lot of people can explain why. There was a lot of uncertainty. People didn't know what was going on. They felt like they had to watch the news to get information. And I think with Biden's slipping leadership, both, the cognitive stumbles, the physical stumbles, but also just generally conflicting signaling on the international front, I think people are starting to say things are not going well, and their options are either to close their eyes and try to avoid the media at all and stick their heads in the sand, or to become really aware and kind of overthink what's going on in the U.S. for U.S. and especially in the Biden White House.
I think that's a great idea to focus on the brain broken, constantly, because that's such a natural human instinct to just, my leader can't function. I think it makes total sense that that's the top issue because people don't feel confident at all. So
it's wild to me that we have become such a gluttonous and successful nation that the issues that affect us now are unrelated to policy. The issues that we truly deeply care about are turning into cultural issues and not where's the food coming from. Now, don't get me wrong, where's the food coming from is a huge issue, but I'm saying man, we have fat homeless people. You know what I mean? We have truly conquered rather poorly, I might add, but man, just go back 100, 200 years and tell the people in this country and be like, you know what people are going to be voting on for president? Cognitive function of the president. That's it. And they're going to be like, aren't people going to be worried? Well, it's all ancillary. If your president's broken, can you really solve the economic problems and all that stuff? But people are going to be complaining about all sorts of weird things in TV shows, movies, the words that are being used. And they're going to be like, how will you have time to do that when you are hungry and starving and winter is coming? And I go, no, we got refrigerators. We got preserved foods. We have trucks and planes that can transport food. You go to Barrow, Alaska, and they ship in food by plane. So there's no trees. They're in the Arctic Circle. No trees. Just frozen mud everywhere. And you can have sushi and cheeseburgers.
Didn't they hide Roosevelt's condition for a while?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And couldn't walk.
And I think that, in the past, there, I'm sure, have been many cases of presidents having, serious health issues, but there was so little media pointed at them, and media was so different back then that it was way easier to have it not be a top issue.
Right. And I think not being able to walk, wasn't there a story about them like strapping him to a podium so he could stand during a speech, right? They would put the, whatever. Not being able to talk is very different than not being able to effectively communicate with the people. I don't know
stand?
how.
Not being able to stand is different
walk.
from. Oh, you said walk?
I think you meant walk. You said talk.
You said talk.
Yeah.
You said not being able.
I think Biden not being able to talk is a worse problem for them to have to deal with than someone not being able to walk or stand,
sure.
right?
Right.
The physical ailment is serious, but it was more about you expect your leader to be strong and doing all these things and do whatever. Biden falls off the bicycle. That is embarrassing. It is way worse to me that he can't remember which leader he's being asked about in a direct interview. I think that the cognitive ability is something you can't hide. And remember that he gets a clean bill of health every year from the White House doctor. I love when they put this out. I wait for it.
That's the
They
conspiracy.
delay putting it out for as long as possible. And then when it finally comes out, they don't even release it regularly. They won't release a PDF copy. You have to find the link and go for it. And they'll be like, oh, well, he's got some acid reflux, but other than that, he seems okay. This is obviously a huge lie to the American people. And I think it is a strange position for the party that's saying well, we release the White House visitor logs. We're really transparent. They're the ones that want all kinds of crazy things to also be the ones that won't confront the reality that something is clearly wrong.
Yeah, the issue though, so Tim, what do you think is the percentage likelihood that it's Biden and not somebody else that
for the nomination?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think there's a strong possibility it's not going to be Biden, even right now. I thought he was going to be out by March, but I wonder if they have no plan at all.
Yeah.
None. And so they're just the ship has crashed. Steal as much silverware as you can before the ship goes down, and then GTFO.
Because otherwise, it's such a easy strategy to just hammer on the brain broken. It's so clear.
Yeah,
People don't feel
debate,
comfortable.
I'm so excited for this debate. It's going to be wild. We're probably going to be sitting here, and I'm just going to we got a popcorn machine now.
It'd be awesome.
I think we'll just make a bunch of popcorn, and we'll just watch. And like normally we do the commentary thing, but like nah, Biden's going to be like,
What's the date on that?
27th
of June.
And then 2 days later, it's the fight. Conor McGregor, I think.
Sick.
Yeah.
I mean, so
I'm more
the
excited for
New
that.
Jersey primary is yesterday, and I think it's something like over 6% of the write-in vote was not Biden, right? And that's actually not a cognitive commentary. That's again a geopolitical that has to do with Hamas, Israel, and Palestine. But people either don't want him for ideological reasons, or they don't look at him and say, "We're confident you can make it." Like this is a very strange position for an incumbent president to be in, where people are saying like, you just don't make me feel safe, either because you can't talk or because I think you're going to send us to war.
Well, maybe the point of the criminal trials against Trump is to make sure he doesn't talk about real issues, so that he's constantly just going, "They're putting me in jail. It's not fair." And then regular Americans are like, "I don't care about this."
It also means the Biden administration can just be like, "Look at this guy, the convicted felon. Don't ask us any specific policy questions."
If Trump came out and said, "Here's what I'm going to do to help cover your bills. Here's what I'm going to do to make your gas cheaper. They're trying to lock me up because I have plans and they don't," that would work. But I think, his rallies are funny, but I wonder if, I'm not saying Trump's falling for it, but I wonder if their strategy is just make sure he doesn't talk about the issues Americans care about and are actually worried about.
Yeah, it's good for him to acknowledge the situation that he's in, but not fall too much into the victim nonstop mindset and just stay focused on actual issues.
And I think you could, I mean, again, I always think Trump should be on the offensive here. Like, I'm interested in the debate not because I think we'll have any, intelligent, nuanced conversation about policy, but I do think it would be interesting to see Trump be on the offensive and say, Biden, you have to explain why America is in the state that it's in right now. Why are we looking at conflict internationally on so many fronts? Why do people feel like there is no way out? They're sort of in an economic downward spiral because everything is so expensive. What's going on with our border? Why are you not being held accountable? Like, Trump has a lot of punches to throw in this respect. And if the moderator and Biden are able to say, well, you were just convicted in a trial, and Trump doesn't just push it aside and keep pushing on Biden's record, it's showing that there's definitely a way to distract him from the advantage that he could lean into.
Perhaps.
I think that the best strategy that Trump has is just to continue to...
The fight's off?
What?
UFC 303 is off?
What happened?
Oh, what?
No.
Really? Yeah, they removed 303.
Why?
Conor McGregor canceled press conference. Oh, that's not fun. Is the fight really getting canceled? Oh man, I will plots.
Let's send him to jail. He's gonna raise $1 billion. Of
course, yeah, but doesn't mean they won't send him to jail.
Right.
We got this story for you guys. I'd like to congratulate our good friend. This is what's his name? Rep. Donald Payne Jr. Congratulations, good sir, for winning an election from beyond the grave.
Sick.
A dead Democrat won his primary.
His office, so he had a heart attack, and his office initially was like, everything is fine, no worries, he's going to be back soon. And then it came out that actually he had been on a ventilator for weeks.
Wow.
He was in a coma, and his office was like,
that's sad.
He's recovering. No, also he took the seat that his dad previously, his dad died, vacated a seat, he got this seat.
What?
Yeah.
It's a cursed seat.
And so... I mean, obviously, death is sad. This has happened a couple times before. Like, Hale Boggs went missing in Alaska, but it was so close to his primary, like his name was already on it. He won anyways. So it does happen on occasion, but I think Democrats in Congress are in a weird position. We know the margin is really tight right now. It's only like 4 seats difference.
New Jersey's 10th district is cursed. And if you are running for Congress, you could fall victim to that curse.
Well, what if there's a new election and Republican wins it or something else happens? Like,
and then he has a heart attack.
It's just, and a ghost. Eventually they're like, we'll just put a ghost in. They're in the best shape to hold this. And they say, it's not term limited, so the ghost stays in for 100 years.
The real story is that people voted for him. Mm-hmm. Why? Because people don't care about anything.
Because they mostly don't pay attention. They
don't care. All they care about is Democrat, Republican.
Yeah, and I seriously wonder, did any of them know he had died? Because again, his office was weird about it. I mean, I remember his passing. It's very sad for his family. You know, his young children. Again, his office had been a little bit sketchy about not being honest about the fact that he wasn't in good conditions, that things were looking pretty serious. And so theoretically, that would have been the time when voters were like, oh no, maybe we've got to like plan ahead.
Nobody even tried to run against him.
It's an uncontested district.
That's wild, man. And then
Parts of
people
New
who went
Jersey
and
are
voted, they were like,
blue.
I'll vote for this guy because he has a D. I said we abolish ballots. Abolish. Solves all the problems.
How do you go in? What's your plan?
You want to vote for someone, you got to write their name down.
Your name down?
Oh, you got yeah.
That's how it used to be.
Yeah.
Before the Civil War, you had to write someone's name down.
Yeah.
And what would happen is political parties would give people ballots being like, here's a list of the candidates that we like. So what would happen is if we got rid of ballots, Democrats wouldn't give out, there'd be no mail-in ballots anymore. It would literally, they'd bring you a flyer being like, when you go to vote, vote for these people. And anything that arrived in the mail for voting would be blank. And so they'd be like, here's a list of names to write in. People wouldn't do it.
Yep.
They'd be like, I'm not writing all that down. Right now, you go check a box, and then I can be like, get out of my face. But you get rid of ballots, dead people aren't going to win elections anymore. It didn't used to be like this. Abolish ballots.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah, honestly.
But I think this shows,
People don't have time to research all of the different...
and they shouldn't vote.
Right.
Yeah.
Rock the vote, the whole like rock the vote in the 90s was a terrible idea.
What was it?
It was a campaign on MTV. It was when Bill Clinton went on and played sax and talked to, the MTV generation
Cool
and
and
stuff.
relatable.
Yeah, he was cool, musician, blah, blah, blah. But the rock the vote was just getting people out to vote. And it didn't matter that they were unaware of what the thing was. And the way that rock the vote was, or if I recall correctly, the way that it was presented, it wasn't partisan. But you still, it wasn't partisan, but you still kind of got the sense that people were probably going to vote for Democrats because the Democrats were the not stuffy ones. Bill Clinton smoked pot. It was kind of like that was the vibe.
Well, it's like when Facebook, pushes everybody to go vote. It's like the vibe behind it.
You're right, but it's
Yeah.
100 times less insidious back in the 90s than it was with Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook only sends notifications to Democrats.
Yeah, it's real bad.
And that's data they actually tracked. Democrats will get a notification saying go vote, Republicans won't.
Yeah,
That's how the game works.
it is. There's a lot of underhanded stuff, and it's going to make it more and more likely that people are going to have less and less confidence in.
Just raise the voting age to 30.
I don't see that happening.
I'm now wondering if Payne's wife is going to run at his place, because the last two times, again, I'm going to reference Hale Boggs and Nick Begich when they went missing in Alaska and they won their elections. It ended up being their wives who ran, and Hale Boggs' wife did win. I think it's always weird when this stuff happens. I think if you were to have no name on the ballot, it would have been interesting because maybe the community would, in this case, have fundamentally been like, oh, well, this person is already someone I know and who's been active in our community, and that's who I think should represent us. But ultimately, I think it's just sort of name association. Like the fact that this guy had this seat for so long after his dad held it for a long time, like this community is just sort of like, I don't know, that's the guy who does this job. It would take more legwork for people to be aware of what's going on. They'd have to be more plugged into their community if they were trying to have to select someone on the fly after someone has
Only
died
net taxpayers can vote. All in
I don't
favor?
hate it. I don't hate it. I don't like
Got two?
Huh?
Yay?
Yeah.
Yay? All right. The yays have it. From now on, the court of Timcast has agreed, if you're not a net taxpayer, you don't get to vote, which basically means like only the top 20% of income earners in the country get to vote from now on. So that basically means like everybody watching the show, you can't vote anymore. Net taxpayer is not an easy thing to accomplish, because basically the way it works is if you're spending if your tax bill at the end of the year is like $20K, you're not a net taxpayer. I think it's got to be like $60,000 or $70,000 in taxes paid before you become a net taxpayer. Yeah.
So what's the actual definition?
It means you are paying more than you are receiving. So the amount of people in this country who pay more than they receive is super small. The overwhelming majority of people in this country, including the working class and middle class, are receiving more from the government than they're paying into it. And it's overwhelmingly the wealthy that are covering the costs. Technically, it's modern monetary theory, and the government just prints money and deficit spends into oblivion until the system crashes.
Do you actually want that?
Want what? Net taxpayer voting?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not saying it's a perfect solution, but the idea that anyone can show up to a polling station, vote for a dead guy, I think the dead guy should be the one in office, and no one can challenge him. He should be the one on the ballot. They should not remove him. That people want what they want. If they voted for a dog, the dog is the mayor. I've seen it happen.
Nothing's getting done. Well, you voted for a dead guy, man. It's your own fault.
Remember when the Republicans voted for the trans anarchist Satanist in New Hampshire?
Yeah, she almost won too.
That's right.
She just got out of jail too. It was crypto stuff though, so she
weird.
in jail.
So a transgender anarchist Satanist ran as the Republican sheriff, I believe, right?
She was trying to run for sheriff
and won the primary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Republicans started freaking out, like, who did I vote for? What? And I was laughing. I was like, you deserve it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, not really. I mean, I guess. But it proves a great point.
Yeah, it does.
People will vote for anyone as long as the right letter is next to their name. This is not voting. The system doesn't work. Right now, we have a contest between two warring oligarch parties about who can get the most pieces of paper with signatures on them. No one's actually voting for anything meaningful. And the problem is Donald Trump beat them at their own game. So they lost their minds. And now their game ain't working no more and they can't stop Trump. So this is what they're resorting to. But elections weren't supposed to be real. There you go.
Elections weren't supposed to be real.
Right.
Well,
Not
I've
in the
floated
past
before
100
that
years.
only married men who own property and have children should vote. So I think, there's all kinds of ways we could improve the voting system.
How about only married men who own property and have children and who served in the armed forces?
Get really specific. Interesting.
You had to have served this nation, have a real stake in the future of this nation, and that includes land and family.
I think the land and family are actually a big part of it. I mean, I think ultimately we want our voters to be engaged in our civic process, and I remember Vivek Ramaswamy talked about this, right? Like, you want people who feel as though they are actively participating in the society, that they have ties to the culture, and especially to their communities, to be the people casting votes to decide what happens here. And I think, again, like, dead congressmen on ballots are sort of complicated. Did they print it already? Should they have voted for him? I don't know. But I think the voters should be people who feel invested in the future of the nation.
Is there any precedent of countries having systems like you're describing?
The United States?
When?
When it first started, you had to be a landowner to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
And a man. I'm not a historian on the voting processes of other countries. I'd imagine all of them. In fact, I'd imagine most of them don't allow you to vote at all.
The vote was fairly novel in like 1800. You know what I mean? It's not like it was common for the average man to be able to vote. The average person, like you hear a lot of feminists talk about the fact that like it took so long for women to get the vote and et cetera, which is a blatant lie, because if you look at on a societal time scale, right? How long human beings have been human beings and we've had societies, the men got the right to vote, and instantaneously women did. If you look at it as at a full time scale, it was what, 50 years, 100 years, less than 100 years when they got the vote. So in 200,000 years that human beings have been human, and 100,000 years that we've had fairly complex societies, and they didn't have votes, like, didn't at all, and all men didn't have enfranchisement when the U.S. was created. It was only, we were talking select few. So then even beyond that, once all men got enfranchised, actually all men, it was almost instantaneously that women did too. It's just that if you say that men oppressed women, then you can go ahead and demand goodies from the government. Because
I want to show you this map. This is really funny. This is a map of countries with women's right to vote, yes and no. And you can see there's only one country listed where women don't have a right to vote. You know what country that is? It's Eritrea. Do you want to know why that's funny? Because North Korea is listed as, yes, women can vote. That's a good one.
I mean, Iran.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Saudi Arabia.
Women can vote and run.
Does Saudi Arabia have elections? They're a kingdom.
So this is actually, in 2015, women are granted the right to vote and hold office. There are no national elections in Saudi Arabia. It's an absolute monarchy. What is this map?
Yeah.
Look, Greenland has no data. If you're a woman in Greenland, you can't vote.
What website is this?
Worldpopulationreview.com. This is fun.
Suspect.
Saudi Arabia allows women to vote, but it's an absolute monarchy with no elections. Huh? What?
I want to fact check that because there was all this criticism of Saudi
I guess it's
Arabia.
local elections.
Yeah, and there was this. They're in charge of. I can't remember. Maybe it's the UN's like feminism conference this year, and people are like, "But it's Saudi Arabia." Like, no, they're historically not super friendly to women. But I guess Saudi Arabia is really trying to change their image. You know, they let women drive now with male chaperone. Like, it's very funny, but it's all just to appeal to the West.
I do think it's funny too that like there are countries that are gray. They just don't know. Benin, it's like they might be able to. I'm not sure. Guinea-Bissau, I don't know. What's this? Or is this is that Timor-Leste? How do you pronounce that?
Timor. I'm pretty sure you got Timor right.
New Caledonia, not sure. Maybe they can. Maybe they can't. Maybe there are many more countries where they can't actually vote. Let's jump to this next segment, my friends. Trump floats, putting his opponents and Hillary in jail if he wins in 2024, as MAGA plots retribution for the hush money guilty verdicts. This is really funny because we've been talking about this. Like, there should be lists of the Democrats who are going to be criminally prosecuted for the things they did. And, like, you know, Hillary Clinton's way up on the list. She's like the top. Like, Fauci's way up there. And Hillary Clinton, of course, for the Steele dossier, the financing of that. Then there's the destruction of the public records with BleachBit. Come on, the list is huge. And the funny thing is, we mention all this, and then what does the media do? They report Trump supporters want to jail Alvin Bragg. I'm like, Bragg? He's like number 15 on the list, maybe even 40. Like, at the top of the list, we got Fauci and Hillary Clinton.
Just because it's the top of mind. It's just the most.
Well, it's because Bannon was talking about it, and I'm like, the media is like, Trump supporters threaten to jail Alvin Bragg. And it's like, dude, that is an understatement. The people who are going to be criminally charged and arrested, and I want to give a shout out to the Biden administration for posting the clip from this show where I said we will have investigations. Donald Trump will be elected. Okay. I'll tell you exactly how we'll do it. Trump will be elected, and then he will appoint an attorney general that will launch investigations, and where there is evidence, warrants will be issued. We will then take the Democrats to a room to be made comfortable, and then the prosecutors and the law enforcement officers will make a decision about what to do next.
I think it's funny that there's clearly a group of people in the Biden campaign that are assigned to watch Timcast IRL every night.
That's awesome.
Isn't that funny? Hope you guys are doing well.
No, I think they saw one of the lefty blogs that was writing about it.
I bet there's someone who has to watch it.
Yeah. And they were like, hey, let's share this clip. And it's really funny because I'm like, we will criminally charge the people that we know committed crimes. And they're like, they're going to arrest us for the crimes we committed. And it's like, okay. It's not controversial. Let's speak neutrally. I believe that when Trump is elected, all Democrats and Republicans who have committed crimes should be criminally charged when there's evidence and there are warrants granted by judges or grand juries, indictments returned, and they should go to jail. They should go to jail. Republicans and Democrats combined. There you go, President Biden. Hopefully that was sufficient for you.
Yeah.
Because I can name a handful of Republicans How about Liz Cheney? There was a Secret Service agent who wanted to testify that Cassidy Hutchinson was lying about Donald Trump attacking the driver of the beast, and Liz Cheney didn't want to do it.
Lying under oath. Was she under oath?
The Pearl.
No, Liz Cheney. Well, Cassidy Hutchinson, I don't know, but Liz Cheney should be. That's obstruction.
Yep.
There you go.
The pearl clutching on the, Trump says that maybe Democrats should be jailed from the left-wing media was really funny today. Partially because they're like, he's suggesting he would go after his political enemies. And it rightly so. The right wing is like, excuse me? Do you guys not understand what just happened?
What people don't realize is that every person who went to a gulag got a trial.
Yeah.
There's no reality. The Democrats are like, but a jury decided that Trump was guilty. And it's like, do you think that when communists and Nazis took over, they didn't have trials? Of course they did. We call them show trials. And then they send you away.
You should get someone from the Biden administration on the show.
Oh, yeah, right.
Whoever has to watch Timcast, please come on the show.
Yeah. What would you ask Biden if you could sit him down? What would be the first question?
Well, I think the challenge with asking Biden any question is he's not cognizant of his own existence. So it's like I can ask the UFO the same question and get the same response. It's going to be muttered, garbled nonsense. But there's a lot of questions for Biden, but I don't think any of them actually matter all that much. Because most of Biden's life is long over. He is well past, he's past life expectancy. He lacks lucidity. So you're not going to get an answer out of him for a question that you don't already know the answer to. Everything pertaining to Burisma, the shady dealings with his brother, the contracts they got in Iraq, all of that's out there already. Usually you have to wait, a couple decades, or it's like when someone's in office, you don't learn the secrets right away. It's only a decade or so later you start to learn these things. Well, Biden's been in office for so long, we've learned most of the things. And so what is there to really ask the guy?
I feel like Jill is way more of a power player than people realize. Imagine all the
Dr. Jill.
Imagine all the late night ramblings that she's heard, all the information that she had. And she's very good at kind of staying behind the scenes and not in the spotlight, but she knows a lot more than
I know what I'd ask Biden. If you didn't eat breakfast yesterday, how would you have felt? That's what I'd ask him.
All right. Please respond, guys.
And then when he goes, what do you mean? I had breakfast yesterday. I'll be like, exactly. And that's the only question you need to ask. Maybe a Turing test. I'd ask him, you are walking in the desert and you come across a turtle on its back. Do you flip it over? What was the question they asked in Blade Runner? Was something like that?
Oh, I don't remember.
Yeah, it's like you come across a turtle and it's on its back. It is being dehydrated. Do you flip it over or whatever? They were trying to figure out if you were a replicant or something. Ask him those questions.
I did not know that.
The problem is his brain doesn't work. It's like there's no real questions to ask him. You could ask him basic stuff like, here's the issue, right? With Trump, I asked him questions. How are you going to secure the border? How are you going to, I said, how are you going to deport all these people? Something he said he wants to do. Biden just lies about everything. What am I going to ask? Oh, Biden, you want to secure the border? How are you going to do it?
Yeah.
But he's like, I'm not. It's like, oh, so what do you want to do? What do you actually want to do? Lie. Okay.
Well, I've always felt this way because I've always identified as conservative, but it's harder for me to think about what you would ask Biden because I just know his goals are very different from mine, right? I could ask him questions about, or, Tim could ask him questions about immigrations, but his objectives for immigration in this country are very different than what I would go for, right? He wants to have people enter the country. This is the things that the Democrats have advocated for. They're okay with a certain level of illegal immigration. I am not. It's very different than talking to someone who you believe would potentially carry out policies that you're sympathetic to. I would be interested in asking Biden, about his previous record, right? Having him answer for his record in the Senate, because it seems like so often Biden doesn't really remember what's going on, or seems do you remember at one point there was this whole story about how he would say his first wife, who died, in a car accident, his daughter died. It was very sad. But then he started saying that the other driver was drunk and it was a DUI situation, and that driver's family had to sue him to get him to stop. He'll say stuff that just doesn't really make sense. And I would be interested in hearing an explanation for his own record to see if he's I never voted for that, or, whatever, because it just doesn't seem like the Biden that was elected to Congress is the same Biden that was in the Obama White House, including and in his current White House.
I know what I'd ask him. When you found out that your uncle was eaten by cannibals, how did that feel? And then he'd be like, oh, man, it was shocking. And they'd say, yeah. Remember when you were on that porch and you got arrested for defending that black family? What was that like? Remember when you marched with the Selma rioters?
Yeah.
What was that like?
I got it. Did you poop?
That was a pretty viral moment.
You need a diaper change?
Yeah. Who pooped? Did you poop? Did you poop?
Yeah,
That's what I would ask him.
What would you ask Biden?
I mean, the smartest thing he could do would be to go on a comedy show or something and actually have someone ask him those questions and have a sense of humor about it. He should get interviewed by Zach Galifianakis and just own it, own his mental decline, and just and try to show that there's actually someone underneath. It's his only chance, but he just hides. And he won't go on long-form podcasts. It's just sad.
He doesn't possess the capability. And I think that's part of the reason why Trump has done podcasts and stuff like that, is because he's making it clear that even if you don't like him, he can still have normal conversations where he is totally cognizant, where he is present, even if you don't like his answers, even if he's going to BS you, because he's still going to be Trump. I'm not saying that he's going to be different. He's still going to be Donald Trump, but at least he's going to understand the questions you're asking and be able to respond with something coherent.
His personality can carry through.
This is why we need the full hour and a half with Trump. Because like the super chat portion, if Trump's here, like, yeah, we obviously want people to ask questions. But, I've talked to their team and they said high likelihood that we end up doing like an actual full show with everyone, sitting down talking with them. And the reason for it is because we're going to pull up a story like dead Democrats win, like Trump, and then we'll talk, and then Trump will give his thoughts. Because Trump often talks about big issues, but having him sit down with a variety of news stories, like imagine if we were able to pull up Star Wars, right? The acolytes, big news, are saying it's getting woke, it's going broke. Imagine getting to hear Trump talk about in-depth cultural issues, how he feels about movies, TV shows, and what it means for American culture. A lot of people would groan and say, I want to hear about immigration. Great, go watch ABC. Trump did 1 million interviews about it. Imagine giving an opportunity to sit down with Trump and hear him just give a stream of consciousness on all of these issues and what he thinks about them in a real conversation. That would be amazing. So we're hoping that happens at some point. Maybe. Don't know.
Yeah. I think it would be cool. I think this show is an unusual format. Some people work with it. I think Donald Trump would probably thrive here. I think the thing that Donald Trump has over Biden and has had over a lot of candidates, Republicans too, is that he has such a strong personality and that he is very comfortable on camera. All the years being on reality TV paying off. I don't think Americans feel like they know Biden better after 4 years in the White House, right? They don't feel like he is more of a personality. He was sort of in Obama's shadow before. I don't think that there's obviously a reason that he is not doing, like you're saying, the long form podcast and whatever else. And maybe it's the mental decline, but maybe there is a certain level of like the politicianness of it all. Like he isn't a developed personality in the way that Trump is. He's sort of looking for the cues and to say the right thing, whereas Trump is just going to say whatever is on his mind. Yeah. For better or for worse, he's not necessarily going off a script. You can't really bring a teleprompter into a long form podcast. I mean, I guess you could, but it would be very weird.
Yeah, it would just be like, do you see what's going on, Trump, with Washington Post? Half their staff is apparently, they're laying off, like their viewership is cut in half. Mm-hmm. They're firing a bunch of people. The boss comes in and says, like, nobody wants to read this stuff anymore. It's garbage. And they're like, have you thought about hiring more women of color? I'd love to hear Trump just start talking about it. He'd just be like, oh, these people are absolutely crazy. These companies, they used to be great and blah, 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 and they just have him go off on it. And that's a real story, by the way. The Washington Post is on the verge of collapse. Yeah. This is actually, and I'll just lightly touch on this because there's a tweet that I wanted to get to. Wesley Yang highlighting the Washington Post. Actually, we'll go for this one. We got to talk about this. So the Washington Post is on the verge of collapse. The boss sounds an alarm over dwindling audience and heated staff meeting. People are not reading your stuff. Let's not sugarcoat it. We are losing large amounts of money. Congratulations, Bezos. And so Wesley Yang says, it is a major inflection point a decade into the great awakening in media. Vice and BuzzFeed went bankrupt rather than attempt what WAPO's new editor is attempting because the cost of pushing back internally was always perceived as greater to them as individuals than going along until total failure. We'll see whether all the cowards were right and whether it's even possible to do a turnaround. There was a story recently from Free Press, Barry Weiss's publication. A guy who worked, what is his name? Brian Moynihan, maybe? I'm not sure. He worked for Vice. He was it, is that who it is?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
One of their hosts.
Or at least I'm familiar with the name, so.
And I'm not sure if I was there when he was there. I might have been. But he was mentioning, basically what happens is, as Vice hires more and more of these young woke people, they had to take down their own magazine covers off the wall. Vice had a wall in their office with all of their magazine covers. One of them said, "We Heart Cops," and had a cop on it. And it was meant to be tongue-in-cheek. And the employees complained. And so Vice, because they're cowards, were like, okay, we'll take it all down. We'll take it all down. It is remarkable. I cannot believe Shane Smith was so weak. Like, I've met the guy. I've known the guy. It's not like I've known him well or anything. But he always came off as kind of just like I'm going to do it. I'm going to get it done. Get out of my way kind of guy. And then the moment some whiny, whinging, woke millennial showed up, he dropped to his knees and begged them and got ousted from his own company. And I think the issue is Wesley Yang nails it. These people were so much more worried about what people would say about them as individuals, they decided the best course of action was strip as much resources out of the company as you can, agree with the mob, and disappear. That's what I think we're seeing across the board in all institutions, in politics especially. What we see with Vice is a great example of it. Vice was edgy, shocking, and offensive. And then a couple woke millennials got in and they said, sell off the stock and jump ship. Because they didn't want to be perceived as bigots or something, I guess.
There's a very simple formula to covering news that people actually click on, which is so it'll be interesting to see what Washington Post does after this statement, because it's not like these people don't know what they could cover, what would go viral. It's very clear. Like the Telegraph covered the COVID cause of excess deaths. That article probably got insane traffic because it was first time, mainstream media coming out and acknowledging that. It's like there's very obvious topics that you cover to create traffic. How do these people not understand?
But it's obvious the woke stuff doesn't work.
Right.
The issue is that the CEOs were like, hey, we're losing money and the woke stuff doesn't play, but we're scared of our employees because they're going to call us mean words. So they burned their own companies to the ground. I mean, look, this is hilarious. The dude comes out for Washington Post and says, we're losing money. And they actually said, have you tried hiring black women? Not kidding. And then he was like, I'm going to bring in guys I know who can make this work. And then they responded with, you just hired 3 white guys. Fire them all. You know what? You deserve it. I'm happy it's happening. Could not happen to better people. They want to hire based on ideology instead of meritocracy, and then your company burns to the ground. Now Vivek is buying BuzzFeed. You saw this, right? He's got like
a stake.
He was
A
nearing,
significant stake.
he keeps buying more and more,
He
apparently.
surpassed 8. I haven't checked this week where he is, but it's just climbing and climbing. He said no plans to stop.
He's going to buy out the whole company? Yo, that's wild, because I don't know if there's anything at BuzzFeed worth salvaging.
But he's saying, I mean, this is what's interesting. His letter to BuzzFeed was like, you need to steer the ship in a different direction. You need to hire Candace Owens. You need to hire Aaron Rodgers. Like, you need to have the other side on here. And basically, because he has the cash to do it, he can potentially have a voice at the table that just the readership of BuzzFeed wouldn't have, which is another fascinating aspect of all of this. Like, the Washington Post, BuzzFeed, at a certain point, they're going to listen to who's in their staff room. Yes, but they're also going to say, like, hey, boardroom, do you guys all feel this way? Okay, that's what we're doing. It's not actually about the readers. It's about their own perspective on the world.
I think what Vivek is doing is an institutional attack on BuzzFeed, because BuzzFeed does not have, I could be wrong, I'd love to talk to Vivek about this. I don't see BuzzFeed as having the assets worthy of buying out and fighting for. It's a failing company. Their stock is at what, a couple bucks?
Yeah.
It's garbage. Their market cap is 120 million or whatever, down from $1 billion, 90+% drop off from what their market cap was. You'd be better off taking, like, the amount of money Vivek is putting in.
Start a new brand. Yeah.
Yeah, $10 million?
Yeah.
$10 million. Holy crap. The things you could do with that. Now, to be fair,
Get them involved with Scanner.
look, I suppose the argument is BuzzFeed is established and it does have readership. And so you want to just buy that out instead of building something new. It's not easy to build something new. Fair point. Fair point. $10 million goes a long way, though. And you could easily turn that into something substantially more valuable if you were to build your own brand. I think what his intention is to de-wokeify an institution.
Is there
using money?
What would you consider the best example of, formerly mainstream woke pivoting and coming back to reality? Is there an
Libertarian
example?
Party.
Okay, but in
But you were
terms of
talking about
a
publishing?
media publication,
Oh, none. What do you mean?
none. Yeah, no, I'm just asking if there's any example. Like,
I think the only example that we know of in modern history was the Reno reset at the Libertarian Party when the Mises Caucus took over in 2022. Now, they did, and they won again, and Angela McArdle won her election again, but for a lot of reasons, they nominated Chase Oliver because, just the war's not just done overnight. But this is one thing a lot of people were talking about at the convention, is that this is one of the only institutions we've seen actually de-wokeify. They took over. Yeah. And there's still some cleaning up to do. If Dave Smith ran, he would have won the nomination easily, but he didn't. So you end up with politicking backroom deals, and then the worst candidate gets chosen. But they still, for the most part, de-wokeified the core of the institution, and the people who are running the Libertarian Party are anti-woke.
So potentially, if Ramaswamy were to be able to steer the ship back towards, drifting farther and farther left for BuzzFeed, it would be a pretty symbolic win of sort of, nature healing itself, at least coming back towards center.
Dude, I'd say buy Vice, but like you're better off just starting your own thing. So I can really break down for you where Vice went wrong. And it was they had an article that was titled something like, "This horrible app can show you what women look like topless." It was an AI app where if you took a picture of a woman, it would algorithmically generate an image of them topless. It would generate an image of their boobs. It wouldn't really be them. And I was talking to some guys at Vice, and I was like, guys, you wrote that article. I'm like, do you know what the article would have been titled in 2010? "This amazing app can show you what women look like topless." Because Vice was intentionally trying to be shocking and punk rock. Now you're a bunch of whinging losers who are pissed off all the time. You went from being the kid in the back of the classroom with the leather jacket on shooting spitballs to the kid at the front of the class pushing his glass up complaining to the teacher that someone's shooting spitballs at him. I was like, overnight you turned into that. You were the bad boys, and now you're the whiny, preppy losers.
Is the whole news division shut down now?
Advice?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's
completely
gone.
Is the website up? Like, are the old articles? I mean,
I think Vice.com is gone. Let's see. Oh, no. Looks like, wait.
there's a handful.
Yeah, no, they're still publishing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I thought they effectively shut it all down. They still got some stuff up there.
If they reached out to you and said, Tim, help us.
Oh, I'd say give me. I'd say I'll buy the company off. You'll give you $100,000 for it. Like, what's the value? So the thing is, Vice still produces stuff for TV. Right. So they still make money, and their cable channel. This is the best part. It's very smart as to why they got a cable channel, because it's a guaranteed contract. When they bring your cable channel in, they're basically saying, we will give you X amount of dollars for X amount of years. So they're like, okay, we got revenue. Mm-hmm. So Vice still makes money and still does stuff, but it's like it's worthless and irrelevant to the average person. Man, isn't that crazy? They lost all their relevance among millennials. They have no relevance among Gen Z. They are just does anybody actually watch Vice anymore?
I imagine no.
They still some of their YouTube videos get pretty good traction still. Some of the newer ones.
They actually have YouTube videos?
Yeah. Yeah, they do. What's the Washington Post head's name?
Oh, yeah, look at this. Yeah. Vice, they still post videos.
Yeah, they get decent views.
Couple 100,000.
Yeah.
What do they post, like a couple times a week, maybe? Sad. So sad, man.
But I mean, the Washington Post guys should
they got a big one a couple weeks ago.
I would imagine some of these corporate media executives want help, and like they might be willing to start covering reality. I mean, it seems like, why is this guy making these public statements like this if he's not sort of like asking for help? It seems like he's making a cry for help. So,
well, I mean,
he
it's
should
public
reach
to
out.
the staff, right? Like his nobody's reading this was reportedly said, and I could be wrong, but in a staff meeting. So
right.
he is
But
publicly saying it internally. I guess he knows there's a chance it could get leaked. I mean, it would just be interesting if there is, if we see a star reporter rise to the ranks of Washington Post who kind of is saying, I always wanted to cover this stuff and now I couldn't, and now I couldn't before, but now I can. It really, I think, depends on to a certain point, like what the writing room is willing to cook up in terms of steering the ship.
We're going to go to Super Chats because we're a little bit late today, but I really wanted to read that media one. So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member to support our work directly. And we're going to have a members only show coming up for you guys, a call-in show where you as members can call in and talk to us and our guests. It's good fun. But for now, we'll read your Super Chats. We got Clint Torres in the first Super Chat saying, howdy, people. Howdy. Token Black Guy says, howdy, people. What do you think about Byron Donalds being Trump's VP? I think that is a based choice. Byron's absolutely fantastic. I don't know. I'm not a politician. I don't know good marketing and political optics and stuff like this. I don't know who we should choose, but Byron Donalds is pretty fantastic. All right. Ian is made out of graphene says, a source close to Tim Pool's office said meow. It was, in fact, Seamus.
Which one or two?
One. Yeah, the cartoonist is not here. He's Seamus too, by the way. Yeah, Seamus 1, he was yelling. That's what he does all day, just yells. Let's go. Xenon1 says, I'm sure it's fine, guys. The U.S. can just give Russia the old oopsie daisy, will get well soon card with a $1 bill in it. Just a little goof, just a little silly fella. There you go. Elk Moon says, hi, Tim. We're a hard rock band in L.A. fighting the culture war on the front lines. Check out our debut single, Information Monopoly, on Spotify. We think you'll dig it both lyrically and sonically. Sonically. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
That is.
Sonically, basically they're saying we think you'll like the tones that we pick.
Yeah.
Do people say that to you? Like, I love the tones in that song.
People say it's more likely that someone will say I like your tone than they'll say I like it the way it is sonically.
But sonic is more grammatically correct.
You say I like your Sonic?
No. I like the sonics of the record. Yeah.
Thorough.
Let's go. Max Reddick says, Tim, I know David Peckman has his own show, so it's hard to do, but you should try to get him on IRL or Culture War. That dude's losing it with his TDS. We invited David Peckman on the show before. He just asks for money. This is something very common among the left. They only do shows for money. Not all of them. Destiny comes on when we ask. Vosh came on a couple times. But a lot of these personalities, they'll just be like, sure, here's my fee. And we're like, have a nice day. You know, we don't pay guests, so later. Maybe one day David will come on while I'm on the Culture War or something. But I will tell you this. I don't believe that David Peckman look, Cenk Uygur likes to tweet things where he says, like, the Republicans believe all the lies from Trump, blah, blah, blah. But when he was on the Culture War show and I calmly was bringing up details from the Ahmaud Arbery case, he lost his mind and started going, and just like, that was an exaggeration. That was literally what he did. And he shut down. And I'm like, my dude, if you can't listen to a thing that happened, like, I don't know who you're talking about when you're saying they just listen to lies all the time. But that's the reality of these liberal personalities. For David Peckman, I guarantee you, my view of Peckman is that he knows he's lying because he has to read the news all day. I also read the news all day. I read the New York Times. I use the New York Times as a source. I use MSNBC and CNN. And even when you use these sources, the conclusion is the same thing. Let's do this. Like, there's no games here. Let's pull this up. Politico. Ukrainian efforts to sabotage Trump backfire. January 11th, 2017. This is it. Donald Trump wasn't the only presidential candidate whose campaign was boosted by officials from a former Soviet bloc country. Ukrainian government officials tried to help Hillary Clinton and undermine Trump by publicly questioning his fitness for office. They also disseminated documents implicating a top Trump aide in corruption and suggested they were investigating the matter, only to back away after the election. And they helped Clinton's allies research damaging information on Trump and his advisors, a Politico investigation has found. This is 7 years ago. This story has never been retracted, only corroborated. So when David Peckman did a video where Ted Cruz was asked about this report, David Peckman ran a video where they were laughing at Ted Cruz. It was Chuck Todd says, do you really think Ukrainian was trying to sabotage, was trying to influence the election? And Ted Cruz is like, the New York Times reported they did. And then you hear in the background an MSNBC producer or an NBC News producer start laughing. And David Peckman's like, they're laughing at him. He actually believes this. There is no reality where David Peckman, reading the news, misses these stories. I pull up the New York Times and I'm reading the front page. I go to Politico, I read the front page. And I'm like, wow, look at this story. Ukraine was trying to sabotage Trump. For some reason, David Peckman goes, I just never see these stories. Impossible. There's no reality where the Krasensteins, Cenk Uygur, David Peckman, Kyle Kalinske, and the rest of them miss these stories and just, whoopsie, this one story went right over my head. Doesn't exist. It's not reality. That's why I say they're lying. Because I will pull all of these stories up for you. So where am I politically? I don't know about policy. All I know is when I read the news, I'm like, wow, this story's crazy. Ukraine sabotaged Trump to get, and they put Manafort in jail. And then when you talk to them, they go, never happened. And I'm like, do you not read the news? Is there like a CIA agent who just tells you talk about this video and you have no idea what you're talking about? That's not true either. The reality is these guys go online, read the news, and then think to themselves, Well, I can't cover this story because it'll piss off my audience, so I'm going to ignore it. I'll give you another example for David Pakman. On one day, David and I ran the complete opposite stories. My story was Trump's approval rating skyrockets. David Pakman's story was Trump unfavorability skyrockets, or his polls tank, polling tanks. And I saw his video and I was like, did I get something wrong? How is he saying that Trump's polling is down? Oh, because David took one poll that showed a negative outcome for Trump and then ran that as his lead story. Whereas I used the Real Clear Politics aggregate. I said, here's all of the different polls. This one shows Trump doing really bad, but when you add them all up, Trump is way up in his approval rating and favorability. This is what they do. They selectively choose one story that will fit the narrative so they can rally their cult base and then accuse us of doing the opposite. Ladies and gentlemen, I will pull up CNN, MSNBC, Politico, and all the corporate press News Guard certified sources in the world and show you they are reporting all of this stuff. And then they say that we're making it up and we're lying. That's the wildest thing. Crazy. But there you go. There's your answer on David Pakman.
What do you think are some topics that Kulinski Pakman would say that you are, not going to cover due to right?
Well, there's no subject we would ignore. If it is the top of news, it is literally what we talk about. When we start the show every night, the question is, what's the biggest story right now? What they would probably do is when I said that Western forces fired rockets into Russia, they're the kind of people who would go, no, that's not true. Ukraine is its own country. You've got to be a moron to think Ukraine isn't taking orders from Biden. The reporting from Politico is Biden approved the use of U.S. weapons by Ukraine that means they're waiting for U.S. approval to do these things. Now, of course, you can make the argument it's because they don't want to lose access to them. So they're saying, we'll take your weapons within the restrictions you set for them. That still means Biden is in control of when and who they attack. And it still means that Russia believes it is NATO personnel attacking them, not Ukrainians. But I don't know. They lie about everything. There's no reality where if you were to actually read the news, you would conclude Donald Trump was guilty of civil fraud, sexual abuse. And this is the problem. It's not a question of whether you're pro-Trump or not pro-Trump. Did Joe Biden offer a quid pro quo to the president of Ukraine in exchange for firing the prosecutor? Fact. He admitted to it on camera. We had Hunter Avalon on the show, and he smirks and goes, that never happened. And I'm like, okay, here's the video of it happening. And he was like, oh. Now, that guy I can imagine doesn't actually read the news. Fine. But there's no way you're going to convince me, because I've known David Pakman for like 12 years, that he's not reading the news. Longer than that. There's no way you convince me he's not reading the news. I know for a fact he's going through the New York Times, and he's likely just saying, better not show that story to my followers. Oh, better not show that one. You only, and I'd imagine a lot of the stuff he uses is going to be singled out, selective, and ignoring greater details. This is why Timcast IRL was vaccine neutral. This is why we were lab leak neutral. This is why we get criticism for it. This is why I said Trump lost the 2020 election, because I don't just target or tackle partisan issues. I just say, here's what I know and what I don't know. This is why I said the Covington kids, I don't know the kid did anything wrong. It's why when all of these stories come up and I say, honestly, guys, I have no idea. It's because I don't. But the people who are coming out, these Democrat personalities, they're selectively pulling stories to lie to an audience to build a base. And it works because political interests like it. Let's read more super chats. Been ranting. Jacob Hawley says, just disappeared. That's YouTube for you. He says, crew, I'm terrified. If World War III starts, if a civil war kicks off, you can consider World War II and the Mongol invasion an effing joke. So many people would die. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Yep. The Quartering asks, hasn't Ukraine been using U.S. rockets since day one? They are attacking Russia directly. They are firing rockets into Belgorod. This is NATO weapons delivered to Ukraine to attack Russia directly. So this is a major and a tremendous escalation. Fighting in Ukraine, the argument is we're allowing Ukraine to defend themselves from a Russian invasion. Giving Ukrainians weapons and then saying we hereby authorize the use of these to kill Russians on their own soil. Imagine if Russia deployed weapons to the cartels, trained them how to use it, and then handed the clicker to a cartel member and said, fire on New Mexico. We'd be like, yeah, Russia is attacking us. We don't care who's pressing the button. They're Russian weapons. We Are Change says World War III already started. Well, there you go. Let's see. Bucket Aquatic says, Tim, if there is a World War III and our replacement rate is below what it should be, who do you think will be drafted when the 18 to 27-year-olds die? They'll take everyone they can for this one. Right, that's what I said. Yeah. They go. So I'm not first in line. After the 18 to 27-year-olds, then they're going to go to like 28 to 34-year-olds, and then after that, we'll find our way. But I don't think we survive when we get to that point. DJ White says, military draft, my body, my choice. And women in Congress who don't have to sign up for selective service have no right to create laws that require men to go to war and sacrifice their lives. But you know what the answer to that is? Those older people in Congress will just vote to draft women too. And that's likely going to happen. I'm really excited for it. We're probably going to have a debate with some Gen Z Biden guy. I think Harry Sisson's refusing to do it unless it's Scott Presler, and Scott Presler won't debate. So
it's not his thing, is it?
Oh, look, Harry Sisson has agreed to come on the Culture War and debate Scott Presler. Scott Presler said no, and I believe it's because he doesn't care. He's doing registration stuff and he doesn't want to debate. Yeah. Or at least that's what he said. I don't know.
Well, I'm not familiar if he's done other debates.
Yeah, I don't know. So we asked Harry. Harry said only Scott. Okay, whatever. Someone else is coming on, and it'll be really interesting because I'd love to hear them be asked about the draft. Very interesting. Let's grab a couple more super chats here. Let's see. What have we? We'll scroll down a little bit. Jeff Green says maybe the Biden administration had him sign an executive order to pardon 350,000 immigrants and allow 250,000 a day because they are only pardoned if they fight for the U.S. It's 2,500 per day. And he didn't pardon 350,000. He just dissolved their cases. Mm-hmm. So now they have no deportation orders. They're
no
just
man's
living
land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They live here now.
And even less reason to be in contact with the government, aka having any idea of where they are.
Mike Perry says, I work in animal feed. The FDA has implemented quarantine procedures industry-wide. I think they are using this to squeeze the food supply before the elections. FYI, I love you guys. Keep up the great work.
That's
very interesting. Yeah. Dally Vice says, hey, everyone, I put out a new music video called Con Men and Liars that you guys might relate to and enjoy. I wrote it around the same time of the State of the Union, also on streaming. Fan of the show. Appreciate it.
And it's music night tonight in the Super Chats.
We Are Change says, MMA match confirmed between him, Luke Rutkowski, and the Quartering. I think the Quartering would destroy Luke.
I don't know how big the Quartering is, but I hear he's a big dude.
He would destroy Luke.
Very large.
Luke, you will be destroyed. The Quartering will destroy you. I think. I mean, like Luke trains, but I don't think Luke. You don't do martial arts or anything.
How tall is Jeremy?
Jeremy's tall.
Yeah,
he's a tall dude. I think Jeremy would throw a couple hits at Luke, and Luke would go down.
I think Jeremy's in the area of like, unless you really know what you're doing, Jeremy can just manhandle you with body size.
Luke
Quartering says in my backyard for the RNC. We might be at the RNC. Jeremy, you got to come out. We're trying to get our RNC venue. It's super difficult because the RNC controls all of them, and so it's really difficult to get a place to do a show. Assuming we do, and we may, then it'd be cool to have you out, Jeremy. What are they? They're just arguing in chat. What is this? Luke says, "I'm a feather further super lightweight." That's right. All right, we'll grab some more. Connor Cooney says, Tim, they're pushing the bird flu to cull all livestock so that we have to eat the bugs. Then they make us all vegetarian and the world is saved from the evil cow farts. They really... Luke says he does kickboxing. I don't know.
I think any sort of food scarcity would heighten tension. And again, if we're going back to the study I referenced before, people being more aware during the pandemic or at least paying attention to the news more, like I think that could actually backfire for Biden because the news does not show that he is commanding strong leadership of this country right now.
Luke would destroy the Quartering. Oh man, they're gonna have to have a charity MMA boxing match. Keemstar, someone light up the Keemstar signal.
Come on, Keemstar.
Luke versus the quartering.
Let's hear it.
And Alex Stein can be the the presenter,
The referee.
I think he'll just join in.
Or the ring girl.
The ring girl. Carter Mai says, Canadian here, America is the last bastion of freedom in our world. We need you. Take back your government and your freedom. All freedom-loving eyes are on you. Do not go quiet into the night. Race against the dying of the light. You are our light. We are. Yes. We will try. All right. Dustin M800 says, isn't a war what the Biden admin and deep state want? Wouldn't that be better for them this year? No. They want the war. They've got the war. The war is happening. What they don't want is to lose public support. And at a time when the economy is being strained because of how they're spending, it is a problem if they come out and they're like, oh, we are doing the war. You already had that massively viral TikTok where that kid's like, I can't afford rent. Why are we sending $100 billion to a country no one can find on a map? That's how Americans feel. So they certainly don't want that to become a talking point. All right, everybody. Let's see. Maybe there's Jason Dixon says, hey, Tim, Bitcoin is now above $71,000. Woof. That's crazy. My 30 Bitcoin is now worth $2 million. Please shout out the Discord. Your mods are working their asses off for you for free. Guys, join the Discord. Head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member, and join the Discord so you can hang out with like-minded individuals and probably people you're going to argue with, but it's fun. That's the networking that we need to win a culture war. So this is our first foray, the digital world. Meet people. Some people are dating now because they met in the Discord. That's fun. And but you can network. Maybe you're an artist and someone's a writer and you're like, hey, we can make a comic. Maybe you're a programmer and someone's got a great video game and they're like, let's work together. I have a great concept.
You should you should give the first person that has a baby, if the first couple that has a baby in the Discord, they get free membership for life or something. If they can meet in there and actually have a baby. Yeah, the baby gets. There you go.
Baby gets free membership.
For life. Yeah.
But with the coffee shop that we're building in Martinsburg, where we did one show there already. We're in the permitting phase. We've got to do some. It's ridiculous how long it takes, I guess. But we're in the drawing step or something. We've been locked up because we've gone through so many different contractors. That's how it goes. But the idea there is to have a physical space people can hang out at so we can start networking and then set up thousands of them. So smash the like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, and become a member at timcast.com. You can follow me personally at Timcast on X and Instagram. You can follow the show, Timcast IRL, basically everywhere. Bill, do you want to shout anything out?
Yeah, if anyone wants to supercharge your website, go to minds.com and you can integrate a social network with your website on your own domain. It's basically your own version of Minds connected to your website, which we've set up for Scanner, scnr.com. So, hit up the Scanner community. And then also Minds is doing an integration. I don't know if anyone's heard of Fish Tank. It's a cool reality show that I'm a part of, and so we're setting up a network for them, and that is June 25th, fishtank.live, and check it out.
I am Phil That Remains on Twix. I'm Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. We're going on tour this summer with Megadeth and Mudvayne. It's called the Destroy All Enemies Tour. It starts August 2nd and goes until September 28th. Our new video is out now. You can check it out it's called Divine. You can check it out on YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, and Deezer. And don't forget, The Left Lane is for Crime. Hannah Claire.
I heard Mike Lindell's going to be on tour with you.
He will be.
Hannah Claire Brimble. I'm a writer for scnr.com. Guys, thank you for everything you do. Follow Scanner's work at Timcast News on Twitter and Instagram. Follow me on Instagram at hannahclaire.b. Follow me on Twitter at hannahclaire.b. Have a great night. Bye, Serge.
Peace out, Hannah Claire. Later, guys. Keep it up on your goals.
We will see you all over at timcast.com in a few minutes. Do 10 push-ups, and we'll see you all there.